Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love, a love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service.
Arise, O souls, all arise.
Good morning. Let's try that one more time. We're mighty, but I'm few but mighty, sorry. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, all right. My name's Beth Andes. I'm a member of this church. And whether you are here in the room or watching online, we're glad you're here. Your presence enriches all of us and our time together. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation. Our tradition is a large tent with room for many beliefs and approaches to the questions that matter. That said, our values of inclusion, compassion, and justice are strong and hold us together. We seek to build the beloved community, making room for everyone, and creating a world where everyone's needs are met. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. Whether you came with laughter in your heart or tears, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. If you are new here today, welcome. I hope you've visited the welcome table in the lobby where you can learn more about our congregation. Would All Souls members who want to meet visitors please raise your hands? Okay, everybody look around. If you're a first-time visitor, please talk to anyone whose hand was raised. Fellow congregants, I encourage you, thank you, to seek out the new faces among us. Let our visitors know that they are valued. Begin a conversation that has the potential to last a long time. So, something very, very special next week. I hope everyone comes. We're going to have a volunteer fair in Conover right after the service. And I got to tell you, getting involved is where it's at. You are wanted. You are needed. You can make a difference in the life of this church and in the greater community. Please come. If you're a visitor, haven't joined the church, doesn't matter at all. We welcome you. Please come. We'll have snacks and you can find out all the wonderful opportunities there are here at All Souls. You're going to have to roll them a little faster, sorry. Joining us today is Reverend Dr. Vern Barnet. Dr. Barnet has served 3 parishes, most recently Shawnee Mission UU Church before his Kansas City community ministry. He founded the Kansas City Interfaith Council in 1989, wrote the weekly Faith and Beliefs column for the Kansas City Star from 1994 to 2012, and has taught at the St. Paul School of Theology and also at Central Baptist Theological Seminary. He was last at All Souls August the 8th of 2022 with Alvin Brooks, whose autobiography he edited, and from which Black filmmaker Kevin Willmott has since created a 90-minute documentary released this Juneteenth. Help me welcome Dr. Barnet.
Thank you. Would you stand for the call to worship? Out of the stars and the dust of stars, out of the play of chemicals and the ocean's thermal vents, out of the evolution of microbes and moieties, out of the rush and pause and turn of human history, out of plan and accident, out of order and chaos, here we are, surprising ourselves when unexpectedly we might see a pattern, when amid uncertainty we might discover there is something right in the world that follows its own law consistently, something we can trust, a transcendent pattern that brings us to this moment with each other, that brings us to this moment.
To the AV people, I'm going off script for the chalice lighting. Stay with me. Why do you go to the forest in search of the divine? God lives in all and abides within you too. As fragrance dwells within a flower or reflection in a mirror, so the divine is inside everything. Seek, therefore, in your own heart. Please join with me in the speaking of our covenant. Goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Then join with me in the song, Morning Hangs a Signal.
Morning hangs a signal.
I had the great pleasure and honor to edit Al Brooks' book, his autobiography, Binding Us Together, a civil rights activist reflects on a life of community and public service. For the children, I would like to know, have any of you ever seen a goat? Ah, how many adults have seen a goat? Thank you. So I want to tell you Al's story about a goat. Actually, we are working on a smaller version of this book for you younger people. And I'm going to read you what we've been working on. As a kid, that's as a human kid, not a goat kid. As a kid, I was sick all the time. Doctors told my parents I would not live more than 6 years. One day, a friend of my parents came over for dinner. He was known as an herb doctor because he loved to explore the woods and find special plants and herbs. During dinner, my mother talked about my health problems. The herb doctor suggested that my dad should get a goat and give me goat's milk. He claimed that goat's milk could help me with my stomach problems. My mother and father were interested. My dad heard about a man who raised goats about 100 miles away. Early one morning, he took $5 and a tank of gas and drove to find the man and buy a goat. By noon, he came back with a white goat in the back seat of the car. Any of you children ever had a goat in the back seat of your car? Something to think about. Don't ask your parents for it. The goat cost $1.25 back then. He named her Nanny. She had pink eyes, a pink nose, and the insides of her ears were pink too. Nanny could give 4 quarts of milk a day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening. After a few days of drinking goat's milk, I started feeling better. Now here I am, thanks to Nanny and several goats later, 92 years old.
Now we'll sing our children to their classes.
Good morning. Hope everyone's been enjoying the summer. I'm Bob Miller, and I serve as treasurer on the Board of Trustees. The Sunday morning offering helps provide funding for this place where we gather on Sunday mornings and during the week. This place, our ministers and staff, and you are what make this the community we know and love, where we support each other as we live out our values. As a church community, we can be a much greater positive influence in the world than we are on our own, and the influence of our values, particularly in the policy affairs of our state and country is so important these days. The offering will now be gratefully received. Please join me in the dedication of our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
In Leonard Bernstein's book, The Joy of Music, he, LB, has a talk with a mythical person, LP. In the book's first essay, Why Beethoven?, he shows that Beethoven was decidedly inferior to other composers in every element of composition: melody, harmony, rhythm, counterpoint, and orchestration. LB says that many composers have been able to write heavenly tunes and respectable fugues. Some composers can orchestrate the C major scale so that it sounds like a masterpiece, or fool with notes so that a harmonic novelty is achieved. But this is all just mere dust, nothing compared to the magic ingredients sought by all of them: the inexplicable ability to know what the next note has to be. Beethoven had this gift in a degree that leaves them all panting in the rear guard. Form is only an empty word, a shell without this gift of inevitability. A composer can write a string of perfectly molded sonata allegro movements, with every rule obeyed, and still suffer from bad form. Beethoven broke all the rules and turned out pieces of breathtaking rightness. Rightness, that's the word. When you get the feeling that whatever note succeeds the last is the only possible note that can rightly happen at that instant, in that context, then chances are that you're listening to Beethoven. Melodies, Fugues, rhythms, leave them to the Tchaikovskys and the Hindemiths and the Ravels. Our boy has the real goods, the stuff from heaven, the power to make you feel at the finish that something is right in the world. There is something that checks throughout, that follows its own law consistently, something that we can trust that will never let us down. LP says he objects. That's almost like the definition of God. LB responds, I meant it to be.
Good morning. I've known All Souls for almost 50 years. I remember Ray Bragg very well. He was retired then, but he was unforgettable. I want to salute your many, many years of ministry to each other and to the larger community. It's a special honor and privilege for me to have Kendall here today. When I was a young minister, I kept hearing about this great preacher somewhere in Illinois, and Kendall told me it was Naperville this morning. Thank you for being here, Kendall. I so appreciate Anthony's help, and it's a great honor to have been invited by Aaron. So I'm very pleased to be with you this morning. Soon after I arrived to serve a church in western Pennsylvania, a student came to me threatening suicide. In his anger and hurt, he told me forcefully he no longer believed in God. I think he wanted to shock me and justify his killing himself. I asked him why he had become an atheist, and he described his difficulties with his school year, with his family back home, with his girlfriends, and then the sudden death of his roommate. Are you sure this is all the evidence you can offer that there is no God? I asked, and he replied, well, I'm in financial trouble too. I told him I did not think much of his argument. He had neglected to mention anyone else's troubles. He did not list famine and disease, injustice and war, tornado or flood, pollution, or the environmental crisis. He had much better arguments to use that God does not exist than his troubles with his parents. I asked him if he could discern any other patterns in his life. He said no, his life was a complete mess. I asked him if he noticed that whenever he threw something heavier than air up, it inevitably came back down. Yes, stupid, he said in surprise and anger that I should ask such a question when he was telling me he was about to kill himself. I asked him to tell me about any other connections he might have observed in his wanderings around the universe. He said that when he wrote a bad check, he got an overdraft notice, that when he partied every night, he didn't keep up with his studies, and that the sun came up every morning, whether he saw it or not. And as he was a history major, he allowed as that he had a theory about a pattern in history. I asked, could you be a part of a pattern? Yes, I am who I am because of Christopher Columbus in 1492 and July 4, 1776, and the emancipation of slaves and the invention of TV. The gist of his reply was that as a sociological element, he was a part of a larger pattern, a part of a story. Yes, I said, even if you become a suicide statistic. But let me ask you about God again. If you throw a piece of china up into the air above a sidewalk and it falls down inevitably, will you not hear a crash? Will it not be broken? Just because it breaks is no proof there is no God. I don't see what breaking china on the sidewalk has to do with God. He said, well, I replied, your life is shattered, and you think that means there is no God. He thought a moment and then he spoke hopefully. It could mean there is a God because of the mess of my life is the inevitable result of what I've been throwing into the air. What do I do with shattered china? Our conversation then took a more practical turn, but this young man felt deeply his experience of the mess, the chaos, the pain of his own life proved that God does not exist. There is another kind of story where people have suffered greatly and affirmed nonetheless that they are part of a larger pattern which provides a redeeming context for their own disappointments. One woman I knew her into her 80s. She told me how when she was young, very young, so young she had no way of conceptualizing what she was experiencing, no words. She was left on the beach, and the tide swept her up, and for a while, all she knew was a change from something secure underneath her. She had no words for this, to the churning, the thrashing about, and she knew somehow, her body knew that she could do nothing to save herself, but to relax and be buoyant somehow in the churn. She could do nothing but wait. And so perhaps for maybe 10 minutes or so, she was tossed by the waves, helpless yet sufficiently buoyant, conserving herself by not thrashing about, until at last she was rescued. This early experience, she told me, still guided her into the rest of her life from day to day, throughout her long life. Some of you perhaps have stories of being shattered. Did you thrash about or relax through the ordeal? One of the most celebrated stories of shattering is not often told in polite company, but it's just you and me here this morning. So I will quote a child's scatological term in the story because it is at the center of the story. From the autobiography of Carl Jung. The story is from his youth. One fine summer day, he has walked to Cathedral Square. He writes, "The sky was gloriously blue, the day one of radiant sunshine. The roof of the cathedral glittered, the sun sparkling from the new, brightly glazed tiles. I was overwhelmed by the beauty of the sight, and I thought, the world is beautiful, and the church is beautiful, and God made all this and sits above it far away in the blue sky on a golden throne." And then Jung choked up because he sensed he was about to have an impermissible thought, a thought worse than murder. For even murder could be forgiven, but his thought, which he could not permit himself to think, would be blasphemy against the Holy Ghost, and he would be damned forever in the tortures of hell if he permitted this thought to come up, to rise, to reach into his conscious awareness. Page after page of his autobiography describe the agony he suffered, the restless nights, the loneliness of being able to talk about this with anyone. Certainly not his clergyman father. Feeling as if this shameful thought were both impermissible and irrepressible. Finally, he decided it was God. God wanted Jung to see if he had the courage to have an unconventional thought, even if what he had been taught demanded certain death and hell for thinking it. He writes, I gathered all my courage as though I were about to leap forthwith into hellfire, and I let the thought come. I saw before me the cathedral, the blue sky. God sits on his golden throne, high above the world, and from under the throne, an enormous turd falls upon the sparkly new roof, shatters it, and breaks the walls of the cathedral asunder. Accepting the thought that God shatters, befouls his own cathedral, and asking why led Jung to new interpretations of religion and personality, shattering the traditional patterns. Indeed, Jung says, religion is nothing if it is not obedience to awareness. The infant, swept up by the tide, obeyed her awareness. In the great ocean of existence, we are powerless against the rush of the billows. We don't even have words to describe the awesome majesty of the waves. Religion is in part a way to acknowledge that the universe works in ways we cannot ever fully fathom. And so I keep wondering about God, the pattern we call reality. Maybe what seems an accident that doesn't fit into my idea of reality is a wake-up call to notice the pattern in a new way. There's a Zen saying, one accident is worth 1,000 meditations. The accident of an Arkansas herb doctor at dinner gave us Al Brooks at 92 years old, and still going strong, I might add. It is relatively easy to find God in the sunshine and the flower, but to see God in the raging storm requires a higher vision of the larger vision of things. It is relatively easy to find God in words and acts of understanding, but to find the cosmic pattern in anger, in frustration, in deceit, that is more difficult. Yet disappointment and anguish can drive us to a depth of being we have never known. If we reject the anger, the sorrow, the turd, we deny a part of the pattern. We reject a part of ourselves. We evade our participation in the vitality of the cosmos. After all these years, I'm still wondering about God because I still wonder about reality, which is what many mystics mean when they use the word God, reality. Sometimes we glimpse patterns in reality. There's gravity, that's a pattern. Evolution, that's a pattern. Democracy, we hope that's a pattern. Mathematical equations, images, stories, rituals, and acts of compassion can reveal sacred patterns, those infinite inevitabilities intimated by Beethoven's Missa Solemnis, Beethoven's last piano sonatas, and his late string quartets. We may think of the God who is reality as present, absent, order, chaos, or simply unknowable. We may think of God who is reality as mother, father, old, young, some pattern of meaning never fully known, but one we bravely accept. Margaret Fuller once said, "I accept the universe," to which Thomas Carlyle responded, "Egad, she better." The secular world sees only the shattered china and not the pattern, the network of relationships which gives meaning to the broken dish. It hears the crash only, unrelated to gravity's music of the spheres. The student at Allegheny College there in western Pennsylvania, the suicidal student, returned to my office a few days later. I did not ask him about God or suicide. He did not ask me about shattered china on the sidewalk. Instead, he brought me up to date about his families, his studies, his girlfriends, and finances. But as he left, he said, "I see that the shattering was a gift. It was an inevitable part of the pattern." Reinhold Niebuhr had such a pattern in mind when he wrote this: "Nothing that is worth doing can be achieved in a lifetime. Therefore, we must be saved by hope. Nothing which is true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we must be saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love."
Please rise as you are able and sing with me number 23, "Bring Many Names."
Holiness in glory.
Here in this presence called reality, mixing cosmic laws with accident and surprise, we make a joyful noise in the gallery of the abyss. We are bound with sun and soil, and friendships are divine, for we constitute each other. We trust the life that gives us being for a while and relax in its ultimate pattern and motion. We now depart to enter the wilds of life with singing. With thanksgiving laughter, we sing the joke of our existence. For life is good, our estate is sacred, and love endures forever. Amen.